Good afternoon. I'm Evan Ellis, Latin America Research Professor with the U.S. Army War College. My thanks to the Inter-American Institute for Democracy and Carlos Sanchez Brazin for the opportunity to share my views with you today. These are strictly my personal views about the future of Venezuela and do not necessarily represent those of my institution. For me, what has happened in Venezuela shows the possibility of U.S. hard power when creatively and correctly used, and at the same time, the power and limits of U.S. soft power. First of all, of course, it was an impressive operation that had its basis in intelligence, including that authorized by President Trump by the CIA to operate in Venezuela, with, of course, many sympathizers who wanted to see an end to the uh, dictatorship of Maduro and his cronies. At the same time, it was important to have precise effects and coordination to capture Maduro in the timely fashion that actually occurred and put an end to the G2 intelligence personnel who were protecting him. The U.S. now has considerable leverage, but it should be distinguished between calling the shots in Venezuela right now versus running the show. The United States obviously has significant leverage in order to show its ability to militarily strike and operate with success to remove leaders, including Delcy Rodriguez and others, if they continue to defy the U.S. It continues to have leverage with targeted sanctions, with the demonstrated power of the blockade of sanctioned oil and sanctioned oil tankers and the impact that that has on the economy, with now 5 different tankers sanctioned, as well as the demonstrated U.S. knowledge of the illicit accounts, the places where the Chavistas have been putting their money, probably especially expanded because Nicolas Maduro is likely to be cooperating with U.S. authorities. We are now in a new period of what I would call coercive diplomacy. It is logical that Delcy and the Chavistas want to have normalized relations without sanctions and without criminal liability, as they have always sought. However, it's important to remind ourselves that these are the same people who hijacked democracy for the past 20 or more years, who imprisoned, tortured, expropriated, stole, and frankly ran circles around multiple U.S. administrations, hoping to that the U.S. was hoping to get a good bargain, and that will continue to be a danger. I expect in the coming weeks and months that we will see symbolic cooperation in a number of different areas, which comes out of the logic of both sides. I believe we will probably see some prisoner releases, although to date we've only seen 9 people released out of a total of more than 800. We will see some migration cooperation. We'll probably see some talk about elections, but we'll wait to see if those are fair and credible elections this time around. We will probably see some counter drug cooperation to address some of President Trump's concerns. And clearly, we will see cooperation in areas such as oil and mining with CVG, including what we're seeing now with the taking of delivery of oil of embargoed tankers. I think there will also be some decrease in Venezuelan cooperation with Russia, Iran, and China, especially in military and other domains, but not necessarily in some of the more important economic domains where especially China is long entrenched. I think it's also important to recognize that the Venezuelan Chavista repressive apparatus, Sabine, the Cuban G2, and others, will likely continue in some way, even while there will be some prisoner releases and hopefully some addressing of some of the abysmal depredations that occur in places like the Helicoide. There will also continue to be corruption and insecurity. These are things that can continue to occur without, I would say, impacting U.S. equities. I think there will continue to be problems with the colectivos acting as enforcers, as well as other gangs, including criminal extortion, and probably problems with some of the more radical elements of Chavismo organized in the countryside that Delcy Rodriguez or whoever replaces her will have to continue to keep under wraps. Some Venezuelans of the 9 million who have left will likely return because of hopes, but I think they will continue to be disappointed with the continuing lack of democracy and the continuation of repressive apparatuses, especially as long as people like Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez remain sidelined. In the oil sector, I expect short-term gains, things like processing of embargoed oil cargoes. Actors that are already there and authorized, like Chevron, will continue to take easy fruit. Probably some petroleum service companies, some gas sector companies, some projects in the Caribbean will now go forward, especially those actors who are willing to take risks and who feel connected to President Trump may jump in. But at the same time, others, such as Repsol and Eni, who may not have those direct connections, may not feel comfortable in doing so for right now. But clearly, there will not be the $100 billion plus investment, as indeed the CEO of Exxon said during his meeting at the White House. You have multiple overlapping problems that include the people under sanctions, and that might be the easy part, but also about $160 billion of court judgments that will continue to put risk that anybody that puts their money into the country could have that money attached to a legal judgment. There's the question of what happens to Citgo. There's the question, of course, of the complete absence of juridical stability other than having the protection of the U.S. There's some question of these are the same people, once again, that have robbed and swindled before. And so there will be a lack of confidence by many in the private sector. And clearly, there is difficulty with the oil sector itself with respect to the dilapidated state of the refineries, the mixing stations, and other things. However, we are seeing a moment of hope. This has certainly broken the ice. The question becomes, how far and what does it mean to continue to work with a dictator in the interest of oil and ceasing certain behaviors in the name of U.S. interest while potentially ignoring for the moment the long-term aspirations by Venezuelans of a return to democracy and an end to the repression.